Everybody, it's Monday, September 15th. Welcome to Scouting the League. Really fantastic games this weekend in the NFL. Some good ones across the college football landscape, but what happened to Clemson? We will probably talk about Cade Klubnik and more going on down there at some point, but that is going to be for another day. Some really good games, lots of fresh film coming in, as we talked about with Jordan Reed just a couple weeks ago. Really excited to keep digging through that. But today we are going to talk about head coaching traits and some of what I have been seeing and hearing. Of course, Neil and I have jumped into front office traits, but again, what are we seeing trends with either some of those names that are now on the hot seat and who has most recently been hired? We will also get to possible quarterback question marks as we go forward. But before we do that, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, and share wherever you are listening and watching. If you are on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button wherever you are at. Make sure you are sharing this with a friend. If you're listening, it means you love football as much as Neil and I. So make sure you share this with somebody else that loves ball as much as you do. Perhaps you have questions, want to know more about something in the scouting world, or just want to know something more about the game of football. This is the spot to do it. So make sure you share it and then go find Neil and I on X. I am Rodrik David at Right Step ADV is where you can find me. My website, rsafootball.com, where I am going to do whatever I can to help agents, scouts, aspiring scouts, anybody in the media. If I can help you somewhere in the game of football, I want to do that. Help you understand scouting, what goes on in a draft room. I was a part of a few of those. What happens in free agency? I was a part of a little bit of that. Advanced scouting, a little bit of everything in between. So hit me up. Let me know what questions or content you want to hear. Neil Stratton, of course, my co-host during the week, taking over episodes this week as well. He is at Inside the League on X. InsideTheLeague.com is his website. Whether it's his new book, his blog, succeedinfootball.com, or whatever else Neil is doing, make sure you're giving him a follow and signing up for that Friday wrap, which we hear the preview of course, every Friday. So wherever you are at, go like, subscribe, and share. And make sure you head over and check out the blue maca insoles that perhaps Joe Burrow should have been wearing this past week. Whether it's turf toe, just recovery, plantar fasciitis, whatever it is, the blue maca insoles are going to be there to help you feel better, help your legs, knees, ankles, and performance be better. Just plug them into your shoes and you will see improvement with those non-slip insoles. Stuart Jenkins, our conversation with him back about a couple months ago was really fantastic. That turf toe prevention, again, from guys like Brendan Donovan in the MLB, Mike Yastrzemski, and now guys in the NFL, more and more guys latching onto those. When you head to bluemaca.com, sign up, use code SCOUTING20 when you're checking out to get that 20% discount, and make sure you are not going to be dealing with a 3-month timeline surgery like that quarterback in Cincinnati is. But really excited about conversations coming up wherever they are in football, scouting, NFL, college, wherever it's at. We are excited about that. So let's jump in. Neil and I, of course, have talked about front office traits, most notably those GM traits as we've seen new hires get made. Again, we focus on scouting. We get into a little bit of coaching, have plenty of coaching guests, as we will continue to have coaching guests, but we don't talk a ton about those GM head coaching traits, mostly GM. Again, as we talked about the GM traits in this most recent cycle, really the last 2 cycles, again, we've talked about really being media savvy. You've got to have a presence. You've got to get your voice, your message out there. Again, something that we've discussed. Joe Schoen has not done a good job of in New York. We'll get to what's going on there in New York, Giants organization a little bit. Again, we talk about just the organizational aspect of being a GM. A lot of different hats to wear, a lot of different departments. Again, even more than I am probably even familiar with, because I was obviously never in that seat. Again, you listen to our conversation with John Idzik, John Robinson, some of the former GMs we've had on. Again, they talk about all the different hats they have to wear. They have to be really, really effective communicators, going up to the owner, across to the head coach, to the coordinators, to your scouting staff. Every different department really needs to run through that funnel, which means you have to be really effective with your communication. And again, as we've talked about the front office, we haven't necessarily talked about those head coaching traits. There are some names who are unquestionably on the hot seat at this point in the year. Again, the New York Giants, Brian Daboll, head coach. I think Joe Shane, the GM, is along. I think they're a pair group. Again, who lasts longer? I think they're going to go together if and when it comes. Again, rooting for those guys. From everything I've heard, both good guys. And again, I think down in Miami, you've got Chris Greer, highly thought of, well thought of in the scouting community, and Mike McDaniel, somebody that I personally worked with in Atlanta before he bounced around before getting down to Miami. Again, I think you've got both those guys. Again, Cincinnati all of a sudden has an interesting scenario. I think Zach, head coach there, Zach has some really tough decisions to make. Again, we'll hit on that with some of the quarterbacks. As Joe Burrow now sounds like he's shelved for a couple months here. But again, you've got some spots where, again, all of a sudden some names are going to start to feel a little bit of pressure, feel a little bit of heat. When it comes to head coaching, it's something that I'm looking at with all these guys, and something that I'm always listening for as these guys get hired. And we start to hear names that'll be hot names for the 2026 cycle for these head coaching GMs. Again, I think back to when Arthur Smith was hired when I was in Atlanta, and it's something that I didn't think about at the time, but certainly showed up through the process in his time in Atlanta. Arthur Smith, let's go clear back to 2013. I was just an intern in Tennessee Titans, Rustin Webster, RGM. Mike Munchak was the head coach. Arthur Smith was a quality control coach, primarily working with the tight ends there, who I basically never saw over the course of about an 18-week in preseason. He was, the guy locked in the closet. He was working hard, didn't talk much, didn't communicate much. He was just working. Heard he's a really smart guy. He's going to be a really good coach someday, coordinator someday, all those things. The same traits were talked about when he was hired in Atlanta while I was there. Again, as a scout, as an area scout, I was not part of that process at all, nor should I have been. Again, when you start hearing the names, call some of the people I know in Tennessee, everything was talked about with Arthur Smith. Really, really smart guy, really intelligent guy, really, really hardworking. Both those, hey, man, those are really good traits. I really like that in my head coach. Well, again, looking back on it now and some of the spots where he wasn't effective, again, the communication aspect, the leadership aspect, again, really wore through quickly. And again, so I think about those traits. Smart, hardworking should be prerequisites for anybody that's going to be a coach in the NFL, not just a head coach. There are a bunch more head coaching traits that are really important as well. I think about my time when I was with Mike McDaniel in Atlanta. Again, really, really a smart guy. Again, listening to him, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur talk offense, talk offensive scheme, the way where they were setting things up. Mike McDaniel was a major, major part of that. Really, really understood X's and O's, how to scheme up plays, how to attack defenses, all those things. Obviously, very clever, very media savvy over his time, again, whether it was in San Francisco or before he became the head coach down in Miami. Again, the thing that I heard about with Mike, really tight with players, again, not much of a disciplinarian. That was major, major question that was going to come up. Does he understand the full scope of having a full defense? Again, you got to have a really strong defensive coordinator, was something I heard along the way, and really needed a GM that was going to step in and take a lot off his plate. Again, Miami has shown over the years now to be kind of an interesting place. Chris Greer, phenomenal GM, very, very quiet and soft-spoken as well. He's not a guy that, from what I have heard, is going to step on a lot of toes. There were obviously a lot of questions, a lot of people that thought he was going to retire this last year, bring somebody new in. So Coach McDaniel, a really smart, really clever head coach, good media savvy. But again, a lot of the stuff the head coach has to do on the back end to keep the team, keep the 53 plus right, coaching staff right, all the different staffs right. Again, those were not traits that I saw or heard about with Mike McDaniel. Again, you start to transition away from those types of guys to a guy like Aaron Glenn now taking over in New York. Again, a motivator, a cut and dried, no sugar coat. Again, my my interaction with Aaron Glenn when he was actually an assistant in New Orleans was not a positive one when I was at the combine, just a scouting assistant. I don't have a ton of good things to say about Aaron Glenn from that experience, but the motivator, the way he understands and relates to player, that's all really good. Again, obviously he ran a very good defense in Detroit. Obviously the late injuries, not able to get it done. But again, everything from that standpoint, Aaron Glenn's a little bit closer. You start to hear a few more of those traits that kind of you generally expect from a head coach. And then two guys I have worked with both and have really, really positive things to say about: Mike Vrabel in New England, Dan Quinn now in Washington. Of course, I was with DQ in Atlanta, Super Bowl run. And not only what he was in Atlanta, but what he has continued to grow. Again, you read, you hear, my interaction, getting to talk to him a little bit at the combine this year. Again, he has grown, evolved, leader of men, a guy that understands the players, understands what the staff needs, understands how to get everybody together on the same page. I think you see that in Washington. You talk about a leader of men. And then again, going back my time as an intern, as kind of a do-it-all guy at Ohio State under Mike Vrabel, where I learned a ton about, again, working in a high-intensity office. Mike Vrabel, D-line coach there. Again, leader of men, relates to players. You saw it in Tennessee, and again, the way that one ended up, again, a very funny building with the way the owner was. Yeah, again, just a rough situation for Vrabel there, a surprise to a lot in the football world when they let him go. You see him now in New England. You see what he's starting to get going, the way he talks to media. Vrabel understands the media. DQ understands the media. He understands the people. Both of them do. They're also leaders of men. And at the end of the day, I think that is the number one trait. Again, we talk about it with quarterbacks all the time. Leadership, number one trait. I think the head coach has to be right there along with it. Can he step into a room, command a room, whether it's coaches, players, scouts, and those executives and ownership as well? Again, be able to look across at the owner who, is writing the checks and worth much, much more than you. Can you look him in the eyes and say, no, I disagree. We're going to do it my way. Vrabel, I believe, can do that. Dan Quinn, I believe does that. And as you start thinking about future coaches for your teams, can Brian Daboll do that at this point with the Mars, with a well-established organization? Can Mike McDaniel do that down in Miami? Questions whether they're going to have a chance to or not. They've got to start winning some games, and certainly the way they both lost this week is not going to help them out down the road. But again, think about those traits and not just the pretty stuff, the nice stuff, the really good stuff that, again, should be prerequisites prior to some of those other things. As we get out of the head coaching stuff, we got a couple of quarterback questions we got to talk about. Again, a guy that I know well, Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco, finally gets a start with Mac Jones as quarterback, and Mac looked good. Again, is there going to be a quarterback controversy? If you listen to this podcast very long, you understand my feelings on Brock Purdy. Game manager, limited in what he does, is only going to go as far as Kyle Shanahan in that offensive scheme allows him to. Defense is looking really good with Robert Saleh, which is no surprise to me. Mac Jones, does he have better traits? Is he going to be a better fit? A la Sam Darnold when he had some time there, really looked good in the preseason, seen what he's done since then. Again, are we going to have any kind of controversy between Mac Jones and Brock Purdy coming out of this Brock Purdy injury? I don't think so. Kyle's going to know how to handle it. But again, Mac Jones really setting himself up for another future opportunity. And to Cincinnati, again, an organization I think very, very highly of Duke Tobin, and the way they operate there is very different, but it's their way of doing things. All of a sudden, you have Joe Burrow on the bench 3 months. They talk about how much they like Jake Browning. The offense has not looked remarkably different with Jake Browning as quarterback. Is that an indictment on what Joe Burrow is? Is that credit to Jake Browning? Is it a little bit in between? I don't know. There is a veteran quarterback down in Atlanta that is, sitting the bench with a lot of money on the table. Can Cincinnati figure out the money portion of it? That is a question that they're probably at least asking. That's probably a question the ownership is asking. Again, whether Atlanta's going to give them up for the draft capital that Cincinnati would be willing to give up for short-term Kirk Cousins, I don't know. But again, Cincinnati, they were a pick for me to be really good this year. Obviously, losing Joe Burrow is a big hit. Still a good team. Jake Browning, still a solid quarterback. Still a good staff. They're really good front office. Think highly of everybody working down there. But again, a tough spot with that division, the way everything's going. So we got a couple spots where, hey, never a shortage of quarterback controversy. So we will find out where it's all going to go in both those spots, as well as the rest of the year. Daniel Jones looking really good. Again, controversy in the end of that game. Again, got to call the penalties. Hey, let's call the penalties that need to be called. That's tush push. That's Cincinnati. That's not Cincinnati. That's Kansas City. Whoever it is, call the penalties that need to be called. We'll get everything else right. Thoughts, questions, anything football related, scouting, head coaching traits, whatever it is, let me know. Of course, I am at Right Step ADV on X. Head over, leave me your questions, comments, DMs, whatever it may be. I will work to answer them as we continue to bring scouting reports, college game insight, NFL game insight as we get through this year. Some tough injuries, some players I really like that we will not get to see anymore this year. But again, NFL is going to keep on rolling. College is going to keep on rolling. And here at Scouting the League, we are going to keep scouting.